Today, Some Stutter Law welcomes Pamela Mertz. Pamela is a longtime active member of the stuttering community. She has served on the boards of both the National Stuttering Association and the International Stuttering Association. She was inducted into the National Stuttering Association Hall of Fame in 2022. And she also hosts a podcast called Women Who Stutter Our Stories. Congratulations on that, Pam. And I understand that you have done about over 300 episodes.
I believe I'm up to 275, I
Oh
think.
my
So
God! Well, I feel very privileged to be in 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 your presence, having a conversation with another host.
thank you.
No, Pam also sort of helps scheduling one-day events with the National Stuttering Association, and she recently participated as a speaker in a webinar called "The Ups and Downs of Remote Work for People who Stutter." And just to let our listeners know that I met Pam personally at the Canadian Stuttering Association conference, Connecting Voices in Montreal. And I attended Pam's workshop called "Shouldn't I Be Over This Shame Thing by Now?" And Pam, I really found your workshop very informative and insightful. So, would you like to share with our listeners a little about the this workshop, the content, and first of all, where did the theme come from?
Yeah, very good question. But firstly, let me just mention that I'm really grateful that you asked me to be on your podcast today, Greg. So thank you very much. It's always an honor to be asked to be on somebody else's podcast. So I definitely appreciate that. I do remember that that workshop that I did at the CSA conference in November. You know, um, shame, I think, is a huge topic for people who stutter. Um, so, in the case of the workshop that I chose to do, all of us people who stutter, we deal with shame, I think, for most of our lives. But at some point, at least for me, I had reached the point in my life where I finally became comfortable with me and my stuttering, and I had reached a point where I wasn't all consumed with thinking about stuttering. It the wasn't the last thing I thought about at night, and it wasn't the first thing that greeted me in the morning like it was when I was younger. But sometimes, even though I felt really accepting and confident in myself and stuttering, sometimes I found that shame would creep back in so unexpectedly that I often had those same moments of fear and trepidation that I recall from years ago when I didn't have those confident feelings and hadn't fully accepted stuttering. So as an example, and I believe I shared this at the workshop that I did. I remember going to a doctor's office for a routine appointment, and when the nurse called me in for the dreaded um, weigh station, so stepping on the scale for my weight, she asked me for my birth date at the same time. So as I was, moving with her, I began to say the first part of my birth date, which was 12, and she had this like smart little um, smile, part giggle on her face, and I noticed it, but I didn't really say too much about it. Then I went on to say the next part, and I stuttered again on the 13, and she laughed, and I was like, "Wait a minute, what's going on? What are you laughing at?" And she says, "I'm not laughing." I said, "Yes, you are, and you and I are the only two people in the room. What's happening here?" And so finally, I attempted to get out the nine, 19, and she goes on to say, "It's not a trick question." And I was mortified and very much ashamed. And that's when I said, well, "Hold on a minute. I'm stuttering. What you're hearing is stuttering, And she just looked like she took a step back and just looked at me. And I finished, on the scale. And she wrote down the weight or whatever. And then she went on her merry way, took me into the exam room. She did not do what I believe she was supposed to do, like finish with the rest of the vital signs or stuff. She just left me in the room, and then somebody else came in to do that. Greg, I was so mortified with that. I was so mortified and surprised at how quickly that shame crept back up. It's not a trick question. And the laughing by a health professional.
Hmm. Hmm.
In days gone by, what would have happened would I would have ran back out to my car and cried. That's how I dealt with it in years past. This time when it happened, when I left the doctor's office, I looked up when I got home, I looked up on the internet that medical practices website, and saw that they were full of words like dignity and compassion for all patients and well-being at blah blah blah. So I eventually reached the person below the CEO's office, and long story short, met with the HR directors, and we wound up making an 8-minute video on hidden disabilities and including stuttering in that then became part of all new hire orientation. So,
Excellent, Pam. That's great.
you
Congratulations.
know, so that to me was a very shameful moment, but I used it in a way that 30 years ago I would never have been able to. I used it to help me because it did. It helped me tremendously to move past that shame and make it into something positive. And it empowered me, so I used that and all I kept thinking was during that time, as and even as I was working with the HR people, all I kept thinking of, what if that had been a younger person who didn't have the strength yet to be able to deal with something like that? What if that had been a teenage girl and the nurse had, done something like that? I felt so good about being able to do that and turn that shame that crept back in, turn that into something positive.
That's excellent, Pam. Now, did your company at the time, or who? Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, the group that asked you to do this video, did they share it, share it to other associations, corporations, whatever?
Well, the company at the time is a huge hospital based.
Okay.
um I'm not going to mention the name here
Mm.
because that's probably not appropriate, but they are. So the doctor's office that I went to is part of a huge um, health partner hospital association. So that 8-minute video is required of all new hires throughout that large organization pool. And that's
Excellent.
what made me feel so good and so proud, that it wasn't just going to be the nurses in that one site that I visited. It was going to be all new hires across that large organization.
Excellent, Pam. Excellent. You see, a shame for me. When when I was at your workshop, went around the room to ask, ask the, ask the participants what was one word that would come to their mind to describe shame. And if my memory serves me right, shame for me is feeling less than,
Mm,
yeah, feeling undervalued, just disrespected, and it's almost like when I feel shame because of my stuttering, it's as if I'm apologizing, not
mm,
not for me, but I'm apologizing. Well, I'm doing both, apologizing for me and apologizing for to the listeners. And it's sad because it's sometimes it's so ingrained within us. And
right.
with my experience as a being, as you know, as being living for many yesteryears as a covert stutterer, I mean, I ran away from stuttering, and the word accepting or acceptance was so foreign to me. All I want to do was just hide my stuttering and just to fit in, just to reshape myself to fit in, to be approved of. And so, back then as well, like, so the thought about me being an overt person who stutters, I thought, my God, that is so threatening for me. You know what I mean? So, what's your? I believe you mentioned you were a covert stutterer at one time.
Yeah, for over 35 years.
My
Mhm.
God, man.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, and it was based on fear. Just, just based on fear. Fear of being exposed, that exposure meaning people would think that I was, dumb, um, that I couldn't regulate my emotions, fear of negative social consequences, fear of exclusion. I mean, it being covert was just based on fear and shame, but of all those things. And I know when I took my deep dive into covert, I know when it started. I started talking early, like I was before 2. I started talking and relatively fluently,
Mm,
and I started stuttering at age 5. So I had had fluent language development from 2 to 5. Then I started stuttering, and my father would yell and scream at me, "That's not the way we talk. Spit it out. Shut up." And his face would go beet red, and he had like a vein or something on his forehead that would throb. And to a 5-year-old, to me, it looked like he was about to burst.
mm,
So my 5-year-old self, I wanted I didn't want that type of reaction coming from a parent figure. So I did whatever I could think of as a 5-year-old to not have that happen. And the only thing I could think of as a 5-year-old was to not talk.
Mm.
And that is when I took the deep dive into being covert, and I that it carried with me through school, high school, college, work
Mhm.
for 35 years. And um you know I I learned from my mother years later that she really wished that she had stood up to him and did more to support me, but she was afraid of him as well. So that was my covertness.
Mm.
That's where it came from. And for all those years, I was afraid of being exposed and having all that crap that I got from my father somehow be regurgitated and have negative consequences
Mhm. Mhm.
stirred up again by
Mhm.
others. So,
So,
yeah.
Pam, Pam, what was the trigger for you to, you know, close the that part of your life? Say, I'm sorry. Living as living as a covert person who stutters has been so traumatic. Traumatic because I feel stuttering is trauma. I mean, when we talk about the secondary, the primary characteristics of stuttering, and the below the surface of the stutter iceberg, the more that we try to hide it, we are reinforcing the below the surface of the stuttering iceberg, as you know, and causing us so much emotional and psychological trauma. So we're adding fuel to the below the surface of the stutter iceberg, as well as to the stuttering. But so what was your trigger that stopped you, decided to make this jump into becoming an overt stutterer?
I got fired from a job in 2006 because of stuttering. It was simple. I mean, it I we can both shake our head now and say,
Mhm.
"Oh my god," but yeah, I got fired from a job in 2006 that I had held for more than 20 years
Oh my God.
because of stuttering.
Mhm.
We had gotten a new director, at some point, like maybe it back in like 2000 and the end of 2004, maybe mid 2005, and this guy just didn't like me. But didn't know at when he first came on board that I stuttered because I hit it
Mhm.
so well. But as you know, eventually, as people who stutter covertly, we use tricks and tools and avoidance opportunities. They eventually stop working.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what happened was that, I was visiting classrooms, and in the auditorium with students, and making announcements, just doing the best that I could, and this guy overheard me stuttering a couple of times. And one day, out of the blue, I was called up to the CEO's office. The human resources person was there, and this new director was there. And unceremoniously, I was fired. I was told that I was not a good communicator, and that I was a poor role model for the youth that I
Oh
was
my
working with.
God.
Mind you, I'd been there 20 years, and the CEO and HR went along with it. So this was in the middle of the day. I was escorted down to my office. There were students milling around. I was not allowed to say anything to them, and a couple of staff that I knew very well. And one of them came up to me and squeezed my hand and just whispered to me, "It's not because of your stuttering, is it?" And I was like, "What?" And then it dawned on me, they all knew. They just never said anything to
Mhm.
me because I didn't.
Mhm.
They were respecting my
Definitely.
dig dignity, but they knew I stuttered. They just never said anything because I didn't. So that rocked my world. Like
Mhm.
20 years, I'd
Lots of
been there
investment.
long. It was just soul crushing, soul crushing. 20 years, I had a lot of stuff. I had a lot of stuff that I needed to pack up and take with me, and I wanted it all in one fell swoop. So I actually called um, my partner at the time, and he came and we got everything out of my car, and I mean out of my office. I mean, I had a refrigerator and a microwave, and I'd been there 20 years. I had a lot of
Mhm.
stuff. And when I got home, I just broke. I broke. Like I just didn't know what to do. And 3 days later, I did something that I had never done before, ever. I opened the computer, went to a search engine, and typed stuttering into the internet for the first time ever, and saw that there were resources available. One of which was a National Stuttering Association support group, which was 20 minutes away from me and had
Mm.
all this time.
It's quite timely.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So, and that led to me going to my very first NSA con con conference not 6 weeks later, after having been fired, no income stream. I lived in New York. The conference was in California. A whole bunch of things needed to happen to get me there. My mom and her second husband gave me their frequent flyer miles to get me a ticket
Mm.
there. The executive director of the NSA waived my registration, got me a hotel room to share with somebody else who stuttered. I'd never met anybody else who stuttered. And I got to my first NSA conference, and one of the workshops that I went to was Covert Stuttering Exposed. And it was there, Greg, that I
Oh, god.
learned that there was a word for what I'd been doing. So, and then the rest was history. I hadn't missed a conference since then, except once in uh 2021. I missed it because I had surgery.
My God, Pam, that's great. I mean, that's quite the story to share, and you must have gone through hell emotionally, psychologically, for at least for a long time.
Yes.
My God.
I can't even I can't even fully describe it. The
Hmm.
psychological, I mean, after getting fired on May 6th, I still had health insurance through the end of May. So, one of the other things that I did was I found a therapist pretty quickly and
Good.
used my insurance, and saw somebody uh, twice a week for the remaining part of May 2006. And then she referred me to somebody else who allowed me to pay him the same copay I paid the other counselor. I was paying her $10 because that was my copay when I had the insurance.
Mm.
And then when that ran out and I didn't have insurance, this other guy allowed me to pay him just $10 a week, and he was very familiar with stuttering.
Okay. Okay.
And
Great.
what a godsend it was to, first of all, to have him in my corner and only accept $10 a session till I got my act together. And he taught at a college that offered the communication disorder and science class. And
Mm.
he taught the counseling session of the CSD program. So I just felt so lucky that
Mm.
like, from
Yeah.
all of the despair, to get a psychotherapist with some knowledge, with a very good knowledge of stuttering. He helped me with a lot of things that, because psychologically I was a mess. Like, I was a mess.
My God.
And I was able to get out of that by utilizing the help that was offered to me finally in my later years that I didn't get as a kid and as a teenager who was struggling, hiding such a big, 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 big part of me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Definitely. Pam, listening to your story reminds me of a saying that, that the very close friend, always told me for years and years. Uh, Bill used to say, "Craig, don't 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 throw the baby with the bathwater." And so what that means is that I for for years and years and years I always considered my my stuttering to be a nemesis.
Hmm.
And now Pam, now now wiser and hopefully older and wiser, that that I consider my stuttering, stuttering in many ways to be a blessing. And the reason why, why I feel this way, my stuttering has brought me here today to be talking to you, has 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 introduced me to a wonderful world of stuttering. The global community. I'm also a podcast host, and so Pam, like I feel that. Do you feel in many ways that you've become a long, long way because of your experience? So, do you feel that your studying was a blessing in many ways, or another word for it?
I do, and I'll accept blessing as a word for it. It's opened so many doors for me that I would just never would have imagined, 20 years ago. I know so many amazing
Mhm.
people, you included. I loved your workshop
Oh,
at the
thank you.
conference. I've met people from around the world. Uh, yeah, it's been a blessing. Like I said, I just never would have realized how how many people one can inspire sometimes without even knowing it. Last
Mhm.
night, for example, I was laying in bed and I was just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw on somebody else's website, couple of people were commenting about me, about something. I don't even remember what the comment was, but there was a person that had commented about, "I knew Pam long ago before she became famous, and I always knew she was one of the greatest people." And I'm like, first of all, who is this person? Because I didn't, because the person wasn't going by her name. She was going by her speech therapy foundation's name. And I'm like, famous? It just like totally threw me. And then I was just like, well, so I responded. I said, I don't know about famous, but thank you for the compliment. And then somebody else that I know wrote on that on that same board, um, I'm really happy to see Pam's work being spotlighted. So somebody had spotlighted something that I wrote. Pam's work has been nothing short of a life buoy for me. I think I'm saying that right.
Oh,
Life,
that's lovely.
and I'm just like, "Oh my goodness." And I didn't even know that, you know? So like it it's really a blessing to me to find that there are people out there that I don't even know that find some inspiration from something that I've done over the years. And occasionally I'll come across that and see that. And that is very gratifying.
Oh,
That is very
definitely,
gratifying.
Pam. Definitely. So,
Yeah.
Pam, now, I'm still in awe that that you have your own podcast. So it's called "Women Who Stutter Our Stories." No, I've listened to a few episodes, and I'm really in awe with all of the guests that I listened to. So, Pam, what made you decide to start your own podcast?
Oh my gosh, that was 15 years ago.
Oh my God, is that long?
I I've been podcasting since 2010.
God.
And I want to say what led me to start my own was I was a guest on somebody else's podcast. You probably know this person, Daniël Rossi.
Oh, Dan, yeah, wonderful
Yeah.
guy.
Yep. I was a guest on his podcast, and I can't recall what we were talking about, but afterwards he had said something about, you should start your own podcast about women. So that must have been maybe what we were talking about on the podcast. And I'm like, Dan, I have no idea how to do that. I have no clue how to do that. He says, I'll show you. It's really easy. And I'm like, well, how can you show me? You're in Canada and I'm in the US. So he mentored me, um, through the metaverse, and showed me how to use, the tools that I still use today, Audacity as a, um, you know, uh, voice editor. And I started interviewing, thinking to myself, oh, there's no way this is going to last more than a couple of episodes. Who's going to want to have their story posted on the internet? And I was so surprised that, people did want to share, and what I learned from this from what I've done is that everybody has a story. You just have to ask.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's what I've learned. You just have to ask. So that's what started it. I started asking people, and I think there's 279 episodes. I think maybe only 2 people have declined. And then over the years, I've reached 2 people have reached out to me and asked me could I delete their last names
Mm.
because they were job searching or
Job
something and they
searching.
didn't, so that's how it started. Just giving women who stutter a voice.
I
And to my knowledge, I'm the only person in the world who is still exclusively doing a podcast only for women who stutter.
My God, I mean that is quite the accomplishment, Pam. Congratulations on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, like I know that Carolina has been a guest in your program, your podcast for a while now. Now,
Yes.
now Carolina may listen to to this episode. So Carolina, I apologize because I always pronounce her name wrong. It's Carolina.
Carolina. Yes.
And oh my God, I mean, for some reason or another, because she reminds me of someone else that I know is it's Carolina. Anyhow, but lovely person, a lovely
Yes.
person. My
Yes,
God.
she is. She and I talk weekly.
Oh,
Yeah, very lovely person.
yeah.
Very. Actually, I think she's been on my podcast more than once. And one time I think I might have featured her and sang, or maybe featured her and she spoke about saying, because I remember having a picture of her and saying on the podcast that day. But they're both lovely. So
Wonderful. So Pam, Emmy, so it's 15 years doing this now. Do you do one a month, or what, do you have a schedule, or?
nope,
Mm,
just
um,
I used to do them like 3 a month, and then I would sometimes go 1 a month, and I haven't done one now since January of
okay.
this year, but I'm doing one this afternoon,
Okay.
from somebody that lives in the UK. So I mean, it just kind of depends on the ebbs and flows of kind of what's going on in my life. I think I shared with you I've been sick for a while and finally feel much better. And
Good to
um,
hear.
yeah, and my mom has been ill for quite a while.
Okay.
So just ebbs and flows of life. And I'll share with you, I had pink eye. Of
Mm.
all things to get at my age, and it took like 10 days to clear up, which is
Oh my God.
so odd. Like, I remember getting conjunctivitis, pink eye as a kid, but never as an adult. And I don't advise getting it, Greg.
Oh
It's just,
God.
it's horrible as an adult. I just don't advise it at any age, but certainly not at our age. It's just not fun at
Oh,
all.
that's sad. My God. But you're feeling better now, Pam, are you?
Absolutely.
Excellent,
Absolutely.
excellent. So Pam, let's talk, talk a little bit. And I mean, like I'm starting to hear the terms like authentic speech and honest speech when it comes to stuttering. I'm, starting to hear that more and more frequent.
Hmm.
And as I was saying, now being a corporate stutterer, I would never consider my speech to be my authentic voice because I was born a person who stutters, you see. And
Okay.
also I feel that to think about my speech as my honest speech as well as stuttering is my honest stuttering, but the more that I'm learning more about it, the more I'm doing a lot of soul searching. We all do it after a while. But what's your thoughts about studying being an honest speech or authentic speech? No, that's a $64 question.
Well, I guess I don't understand why you wouldn't think that stuttering is not your authentic voice. I mean, that's how you speak. You stutter. So why would that not be authentic?
Well, oh no, Pam. Now, no, no, I do consider my stutter as my authentic voice. I really do, and my honest voice, because I spent so many years trying to hide it, and plus, you see, I've also taken speech therapy as well. Which is a whole nother discussion. But now I realize that that stuttering, this is Greco Grady. I'll never be fluent,
Okay.
and so I have considered. And there's only it's interesting, Pam. I would never thought of that before I retired, or even when I was taking speech therapy. You know how people change,
Yes.
and since I've been involved with the Newfoundland Library of Stuttering Association, the stuttering community, attending conferences and on a Substellar Law podcast, I realize more and more the more the more I listen to people. Yes, Greg, you are a stutterer. I always compared I always call myself, to be honest with Japan, I introduce myself as Greg O'Grady, who's a professional stutterer and I specialize in covert stuttering. As a rem-
I
as a
love that.
as a reminder, Pam, of the many years that I tried to hide it and reshape myself. But when all said and done, that stuttering is my authentic voice and my sort of honest voice. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts of it.
I agree with that totally, completely, and I'm glad you clarified for for me. I too believe that stuttering is my authentic voice. Having been covert for 35 plus years, that was fake Pam.
Hmm.
And I've often written in my blog, which I have been keeping since 2009. I've often written in my blog how I can see the demarcation point between fake Pam and real Pam. Real Pam is when I, you know, found the NSA and found myself very tentatively sticking my toe out of the covert closet, realizing that I wasn't sinking into the quicksand or wasn't being hit by lightning, and realized that I could come out of that closet and be okay. Be okay with myself. So I have to say that stuttering is my authentic voice, and one that I am more than okay with because I can be me.
Hmm.
Whereas for 35 plus years, I wasn't me. I was I was stuffed inside wanting to burst free. I just didn't know how to do that. And I wrote a paper for the International Stuttering Awareness Day online conference many years ago. The way found me.
Hmm.
Way was getting fired. The way of coming free and breaking free and finding authentic Pam was getting fired and realizing that at the moment it wasn't the greatest thing, but it became a blessing. It was a blessing in disguise.
Hmm.
Now I have people tell me, and sometimes I still get so embarrassed, but I have had people tell me that I have a beautiful stutter, that it's easy to listen to, and that my stutter is sandwiched between the words that I have to say, and the words are more important than the stuttering. And that's why I named my blog in 2009, Make Room for the Stuttering.
Mm,
Room for the stuttering. So I'm
definitely.
talking, or and I'm making room for the stuttering, and that was very helpful for me back in the day, to have somebody say that I make room for the stuttering. And
Hmm.
that's how the name of my blog was born, because and then
It's a
I had.
lovely, beautiful name. Beautiful name.
Yeah, yeah, and then, so I've had people say that my stuttering is beautiful to listen to, and I've had another person say it's cute. Like, that I don't really care for.
I know, cutesy.
Yeah, I don't know about cute, but, like, and somebody else has said that I'm a very deliberate speaker, and I suppose that's not a bad thing either, but people listen to me. People listen,
Hmm.
because part of that could be because I was in Toastmasters for 8 years, and I've learned to project my voice, use pausing effectively, use gestures and stuff like that. So, you know, I've learned to use stuttering and other tools to be an effective speaker,
Hmm.
stutter and all. If
Hmm.
that makes
Definitely.
sense.
I agree. So, Pam, did you take speech therapy, any speech therapy throughout the years, or?
Nope. My father refused it as a child. He would not let me take speech therapy because it would, as far as I can tell from what my mom said years later, um, taking speech therapy would have reflected, my father, as it would have been a poor image on my father to
Okay.
have a less than perfect kid.
Mm.
So, nope, never had speech therapy. Tried it as an adult, for maybe 6 months. I was very resistant because it was at a speech clinic where SLP students were learning how to work with people who stutter, and they were trying to teach me fluency shaping techniques. And all that did for me was help me feel like they're trying to teach me to be covert again.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's how it made me feel. So I was like, I don't need this.
Mhm.
I just need somebody to tell me it's okay to stutter,
Mhm.
because it is okay to stutter.
Mhm. Mhm.
So my therapy has been offering women who stutter a place to speak, asking them if they had, asking them to tell their story. That has been very therapeutic for me, having a podcast,
Mhm.
building sessions for, people with the NSA. To That is my therapy, helping other people share their stories and share their voice.
Mhm.
But regular traditional fluency shaping therapy did nothing for me.
Mhm. Mhm. It's amazing. It's amazing, Pam. You have quite the stories to share. So we will need to bring it back for a part two or three. I've got
Okay.
still got lots of questions. So Pam, now as a I'm just thinking. I remember a few years ago I had married. Mary Wood on as a guest, and we all know Mary Wood.
Oh,
We love
wonderful.
her. And so I was talking to I was sharing with Mary that some years ago when I used to have a really severe block or sort of a severe stuttering experience. I used to call it a train wreck experience. And she said, Greg, instead of calling it a train wreck experience, why don't you call it a wonderful period of stuttering? And I thought to myself, is she on drugs or something? And but the more that I thought of it back then, I thought, my God, I mean, the more that I've been thinking a lot about my reaction, because remember, being a cover starter, if I outed myself as a person who stutters, I would be sort of so talking about shame and humiliation. That feelings of feeling less than, the shame, humiliation would stay with me for days and weeks because I thought, my God, people know that I'm stuttering. But now now I find that if I if I have a bad moment or bad period of stuttering, I think of it as a wonderful period of stuttering because I mean this train wreck experience is, I mean, the intensity is no longer there. That's where my authentic voice comes in, you know, and
Yeah,
it's okay to stutter. It's okay to stutter, and you see this, this is where we as people who stutter tend to become our own bullies. You know,
exactly.
your thoughts, Pam? What's your thoughts?
Well, I agree. We tend to be our worst critics. We tend to get in our own way. I like Mary's saying about, pretend it's just a good moment of stuttering. What I like to tell people, and sometimes I get people, looking at me like I'm crazy, like perhaps you did when Mary suggested that, was, when I hear people saying, "Oh my God, I stuttered really badly," or "God, that was just so horrible," I like to tell people, "I stuttered really well today."
That's cute. That
You
is
know?
cute. I actually like that as well.
Yes, because, like, we stutter. I've stuttered since I've been 5 years old. Like, I have a great deal of experience in stuttering, so I stutter well. And when you say it like that, also with a smile, like, people are gonna be, like, okay with that. Like, how are they gonna if they see if I say I stutter really well and I'm smiling, they really can't pick up any negativity around that? So, I encourage people to take it like that. "Oh my gosh, I stuttered really well there, didn't I?"
Hmm.
Like, it's hard for the listener to say or take away negativity from that because
I
I'm
know,
not
definitely.
conveying negativity.
No, definitely, Pam, because it's we also need to have fun with our stuttering as well, and
Absolutely.
we also need to laugh at ourselves, and it's just sort of it's just sort of it softens it's almost a form of acceptance. It is a form of
Mhm.
acceptance, sort of thing. You see, and I mean, to be honest with you as well, the whole word of, I may have mentioned this in my workshop. Fluency and I have a love hate relationship. Fluency. My word for fluency is appreciation. Appreciation,
Mm,
and because as long as I do not let the old habits come back of being a covert stutterer, that I'm not allowing stuttering to control me. I'm controlling stuttering. So it's learning that I'm appreciating my lived experience. And you see, if that is not if appreciation is not fluency, you know what I mean?
right,
So as long as I don't hold back or just miss out of the opportunities from years ago, Your
right.
thoughts? What was your thoughts with fluency?
Oh. It's an F word.
The F word. I know. I know. Who actually taught me that? I think it may, but I can't remember. But I learned that. Oh yeah, I was attending a impromptu. What do they call it? Impromptu workshop, and one of
Improv.
the improv. You're right. And so one of the participants used the F word. She said the F word, fluency, chasing the false god of fluency, and I love it. I love the F word. But
Hmm.
your thoughts? Sorry for cutting you off.
No, no, that's okay. I just think that fluency is overrated, totally overrated. I mean, look how many people out there who don't stutter, who claim to be fluent speakers, and who speak terribly, like, news anchors, or, just, regular people that you see, on TV, that, are terrible speakers. I don't know, there's no animation, there's no pitch, there's no general excitement to their voice, like, I don't know, like, fluency is boring, and I think people who stutter, you and I, like, we have ups and downs in our speech, we I really can't describe it, but, like, my speech is animated and emotional, and hopefully easy to listen to, and I hear fluent speakers who I don't want to listen to. They're boring, So I don't think fluency is all that it's cracked up to be, I think what's more important in effective communication is that you're conveying thoughts or a message in a way that the listener understands and can process it quickly and can respond in an appropriate way. Like, if you have to listen to somebody and you're, like, guessing, like, what the hell did he or she just say? To me, that's not effective, fluent communication,
Mhm, mhm.
Like, we've gone back and forth and we've had no trouble really understanding each other, listening to each other, and responding well.
And having fun.
Yes, and we're having fun, right,
Mhm.
right. But there's other people out there, so-called fluent communicators, that you just don't know what they're saying, and you miss out because you're spending time in your head trying to process what did they just say, so that you can figure out a response. And that was one of the things that I always had such a hard time with years ago, when I was covert. I would spend so much time in my head rehearsing, practicing, choosing words that I thought I could say without stuttering, that when it came time for me to respond to my listener, I would respond nonsensically because I hadn't been listening to what they were saying. I was more focused on how I would respond. And I think that has a lot to do with fluent communicators as well. So I think fluency is an F word that we really don't need in the
Uh,
stuttering community.
It's so true. That's true. I mean, so what what I prefer is managing our stuttering, and that, I mean, we as people stutter, we're all on different journeys, individual, but we have similar experiences. But I think as long as we are able to communicate our message, whether or not we've taken speech therapy or self therapy, volunteer studying, as long as we're open studying, as long as it's not holding us back. Now, Pam, before we close now, do you know do you have any last words to say to our listeners? You know,
Oh goodness. That's sure. Listen to podcasts. Listen to stuttering podcasts. You can learn so much from people who stutter. We have a lot to say, and we say it well. And don't worry about fluency. Fluency is not as important as what we say. Fluency is not as important, it's what we say that is important. So listen to us. We have a lot to share. You'll get so much out of listening to us. And hey, you never know. You might be invited to be on a podcast one of these days.
definitely, definitely. So Pam, thanks again for your time, and it has it has been a delightful, fun conversation.
It
And
sure has. Thank you again, Greg, for inviting me.
you're welcome. So we'll talk later.
Okay, great.
Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Pam.
All right. Bye bye.